There is perhaps no term more misunderstood in the modern world than Sharia. For some, it brings to mind a rigid, ancient system of laws used to dominate or control. For others, it represents justice, divine order, and a way of life that aligns humans with their Creator. In this episode, we address one of the most critical misconceptions. Does Sharia force people to become Muslim? Does it compel belief? Or is the truth something far more profound, rooted in freedom, justice, and divine wisdom? To answer this, we must begin not with speculation, but with the Qur'an itself, the divine revelation that defines Sharia's purpose. In Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 256, Allah makes a bold and crystal clear statement: there is no compulsion in religion. These words, revealed at a time when the Prophet Muhammad had already established power in Medina, speak volumes. They were not revealed during weakness or persecution. They came at a time when Islam was growing, when political power was consolidating, when it would have been easy to use force to make people convert. Yet, Allah declared the exact opposite. No coercion, no compulsion, no force. Why? Because faith cannot be genuine when forced. True belief arises from within, from conviction, not fear. You can make someone speak a sentence under pressure, but you cannot make them believe it in their heart. You cannot force someone to love Allah. You cannot compel sincerity. Islam, through the Sharia, honors the deeply human truth. It recognizes that spiritual submission must be voluntary. Sharia is about shaping ethical societies, not manufacturing hypocrites. This brings us to a fundamental concept. Sharia governs actions, not beliefs. It deals with justice in business, family matters, rights, and public order, not with the private realm of faith, unless someone has already professed Islam willingly. Once someone chooses to become Muslim, the Sharia may then regulate certain aspects of behavior in accordance with that choice. But for non-Muslims, the foundational principle remains. They are not to be forced to accept Islam. This was not just theoretical. In Islamic history, known Muslims lived for centuries under Muslim rule, protected as part of the fabric of Islamic society. Jews, Christians, Zoroastrians, and others were known as al-Adama, protected communities. They had the right to practice their religion, worship in their places of faith, and even settle personal matters in their own courts. They paid a small tax in exchange for protection and exemption from military service, while Muslims paid zakat and bore the burden of defending the state. This wasn't humiliation, it was balance. And often, non-Muslims preferred life under Sharia over life under unjust rulers elsewhere. Let's look at Andalusia. During the time of the Islamic caliphates, Jewish and Christian communities fled persecution in Europe to live under Muslim rule. In cities like in Granada, they flourished intellectually, spiritually, and economically. That wouldn't happen in a system that was forcing religion on others. If Sharia were oppressive to non-Muslims, they would have left. But history tells us they came seeking safety, fairness, and freedom of worship. Yet, some people ask, what about apostasy? What about blasphemy? Aren't those punished in Sharia? This is a nuanced issue, and we must be careful to understand context. In classical Islamic law, apostasy and blasphemy were often treated as political rebellion, not just private matters of belief. In the early Muslim state, especially during times of war and internal conflict, leaving Islam was sometimes associated with treason, a form of active rebellion against the state. That's why punishment was discussed by scholars. But even in those rulings, the conditions were extremely strict. There had to be clear evidence, free will, understanding of the faith, and even then, repentance was always the first option. What's more important is that many modern scholars have revisited these rulings, recognizing that in today's world, where political systems are vastly different, apostasy should not be treated the same way it was in classical Islamic empires. Scholars like Sheikh Yusuf Al-Qaradawi, Dr. Sherman Jackson, and countless others have emphasized that faith must be free, and that any punishment historically discussed was tied to very specific political and societal contexts that do not apply today. Even the Prophet Muhammad never forced belief. He was mocked, attacked, and insulted in Mecca for over a decade, but he never retaliated with force for someone refusing Islam. When he finally gained power, he didn't order mass conversion. Instead, he forgave the people of Mecca, telling them, "Go, for you are free." This mercy is the spirit of Sharia. Not compulsion, but invitation. Not domination, but dawah. Allah instructed the Prophet, "Call to the way of your Lord with wisdom and beautiful preaching, and argue with them in the best of manners." This is Sharia. This is Islam. Faith is about love, about truth, about light, not fear. And any system that tries to enforce belief through force is not following the Prophet's example. Let's pause here and reflect. Would you want someone to love you because they were afraid not to? Of course not. Real love comes when someone has the choice not to love you, but they still do. That's the kind of belief Allah wants. That's the kind of sincerity Sharia is meant to cultivate. Let us also be clear. Sharia doesn't give people a license to insult religion freely in public without any consequences. Like all legal systems, it balances freedom with responsibility. Just like you can't yell fire in a crowded theater in the West, you can't abuse religion in a way that incites hatred or violence in an Islamic society. Every society sets limits. Key is intent, context, and harm, not belief alone. So no, Sharia does not force religion, and anyone who tells you otherwise is either misinformed or manipulating the truth. The real Sharia is wise, balanced, and just. The problem isn't with Sharia. The problem is how some people twist it, apply it without mercy, or politicize it for power. But that is not the fault of the divine law. It is the fault of those who do not understand its divine balance. Let's wrap up with this. Islam came to elevate the human being, not crush their spirit. Sharia is a tool to help people walk toward Allah, not a sword to chase them there. In this way, we begin to see that the beauty of Sharia is not in its power, but in its mercy. So next time someone asks you, does Sharia force religion? Tell them, no, it protects freedom, tells truth, and it invites hearts. It never enslaves them.